You are listening to Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls, a podcast where three women discuss horror movies from the silent era through the 1970s. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify, and Anchor. Timely, topical, terrifying.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls, and happy Pride. And we happen to be recording on Juneteenth as well, so happy Juneteenth. And shout out to Opal Lee, the mother of Juneteenth, as a federal holiday. But today we are focusing a little bit on Pride and LGBTQIA community. So we looked through a lot of stuff and tried to come up with something that was positive in the horror community.
we
Especially
didn't
for
have
our time frame.
for our time frame, we didn't have a lot of luck of finding positive queer
There
representation in film.
Queer representation out there in the sense that, you know, the 60s and 70s loved lesbian vampires, but we kind of felt it. And it doesn't, but we kind of felt it was more like a straight man's take on lesbianism, like more of a sexual fantasy for the straight white man.
It felt it felt exploitative, not queer positive.
Yeah.
So we were like, James Whale. So James Whale, as a director, as you know, Visible Man, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, several other things, totally in our wheelhouse. And shockingly and amazingly and bravely was openly gay during this time period. We're talking like the 20s, 30s, 40s, where it was pretty much unheard of. I mean, gayness was not unheard of, but to be open about it was unheard of. Like,
you would have some spots where it was a little more open, like for example, Weimar Republic, Berlin was a hotbed, but overall, it was
England and America, hell no.
Oh no, not in the US.
Which is both of where
he was in England.
So yeah, he was in England and then worked in Hollywood after that. So So like, I mean, and really, so as we do know that if you're queer, you generally still are persecuted. You have been through the ages. You know, you're ignored. Gay marriage only happened in the last decade federally in the United States. There's still countries that will kill you for being gay. You still, even in places where it's legal and you can marry, you still obviously are subject to prejudice and phobias. And, you know, we don't have to tell you, you know, if you're living it, but we want to put it out there that this still exists. In the 30s, it was like just you could be and were prosecuted, you could be jailed, you were jailed. They would chemically castrate you to change you. You know, conversion therapy was big and real and also still not gone, unfortunately, but it was a hell of a lot more common then than now, thankfully. Hopefully it will never be, hopefully it'll be gone and never be used again. But yeah, I mean, it's just amazing. And sadly, though, in the end, Will at 66, or no, he suffered 2 strokes at 66, and that left him depressed and in pain. And then a year later, he committed suicide by drowning himself in his pool. So it's not a happy end for James Whale, but it's really worth noting his bravery, his courage, because like I said, not only was he gay, he was openly gay. Like it wasn't a rumor like with Anthony Hopkins in the 60s or 50s and 60s. It was, he let it be known. He lived with his partner for 23 years.
Oh, yeah.
You mean Anthony Perkins, not Anthony Hopkins?
Sorry. I thought I said Perkins, but I said Hopkins. Sorry. Thank you for correcting me, Betsy.
I'm like, hold on before we out someone.
Yeah.
I don't know his sexuality, but I don't think he is, but I don't know. But
right. So
Perkins,
definitely Anthony Perkins and not Hopkins. My apologies. Yeah. So James Whale is a fascinating person. I highly suggest that you look into him. I mean, it's an icon and it's extremely rare for that point in time too.
There was a movie made of his life called Gods and Monsters, which was
of Gods and Monsters.
I remember watching it in the 90s and very touched.
What is lovely is that Ian McKellen played him.
Mm-hmm.
And Ian McKellen, as anybody knows,
Brendan Fraser is in it, and he's wonderful in it. It's a great film. From what I remember, it's been a minute, but from what I remember, it handles it very well and is quite a lovely film.
I saw some clips of it in the film commentary that I was watching on my Blu-ray of The Invisible Man. And it looked interesting enough that I intend to add it to my to be watched list.
Yeah, I saw it ages ago, so I won't speak much on it other than I loved it, but I just haven't rewatched it. Anything too emotionally in depth is hard for me. I'm like kind of an emotional shut off. So
I'm not. I'm like, it was really emotional and I really, really loved it. And that's why I haven't watched it again, because I probably cried my face off and was like, well, I've done that. So there you are.
yeah, like I said, I'm a shut off. So like anything that makes me feel too much, like no.
I don't need that.
I have to work my way up to it. But yeah, so on that note, The Invisible Man, quick summary, a mad scientist experiments upon himself because he thinks it'd be wonderful to be the first person to become invisible, and didn't find a reverse for it to become visible again. Also, one of the ingredients he uses makes him nuts to add to the, power, mad megalomania that invisibility in itself will give to you. Goes about on a bit of a murder spree because there's no consequences if you can't catch him, right? And he's now all powerful and smarter than everybody else. Eventually, fate steps in, Deus Ex Machina, and snow happens, and he gets caught, shot in the chest a couple times, which apparently cures the invisibility as you die. The drug no longer has effect. And he became visible upon his death. That's the long and short of The Invisible Man.
That's the Invisible Man.
That's a pretty concise and accurate summary.
Like it.
And we were talking a little bit before we hit the record button. What's really fascinating about The Invisible Man as a villain versus James Whale, other monster movie villain, which was the Frankenstein monster, is The Invisible Man is truly a villain. Like Frankenstein's monster is a victim, actually, when you look at it. I mean, things happen, he kills,
a victim.
but it's actually a victim. There's no victim here.
No.
I mean, in the villain. He's flat out villain.
He's
you don't
straight
feel
up
bad for him. No,
he's definitely straight up sociopath. Well, I'm not sure if you
narcissist. I would almost.
Yeah. We'll leave it a narcissist because that's an easier one to tag.
Right.
Because all he's thinking of is what he wants to do, and he will just randomly pull this evil shit, like he derailed a train. Sent a train to, with all the people on it to their death. Why? Because he could, and he wanted to.
Prior to, so to be fair, in a sense, one of the ingredients in his invisible potion had the property of being mad that is injected with it.
Yes,
but he was not necessarily a good person to begin with. So they make a point of talking about science where it's used for good. Like he was originally working as an assistant with another assistant to a scientist who was basically working on food preservatives. And this sounds kind of silly nowadays, but you think about it, like refrigeration is not what it was in 1933.
Correct. Not
today,
everybody had one.
Yeah, and it was not widespread. We're talking like actual ice boxes where you had to put in ice to cool things down if you were lucky, or in-ground places. And if you lived in a place that was hot, wasn't there. So food preservation was revolutionary, necessary, and was a save the world concept.
Food preservation and agricultural technology that they were looking at. You have these scientists which are going about this noble goal, and they're like, this guy was a schmuck. He was not using his science for good. Yeah. And as he was part of that team. I really loved that talk.
Yeah. He was part of that team, but he would go hide in his room afterwards, lock it up, and experiment on something that was for his own benefit. It wasn't for the world. And not even just it was the own benefit, was to bring glory to him, to bring power to him, not to better the world in any way. Like it's almost like to create a bomb, without the intent of trying to save lives by taking lives. But it was just so I can wreak havoc and terror, or so I can be the person that was the first person to. Like it was all simply narcissistic that he was doing it. And the only good thing you can kind of say about him is it seems he didn't bother to experiment on animals. He just experimented.
He just went straight to I'm going to drink
trials.
So I guess that was kind of
good. That's how another way he's a bad scientist is not following any decent research protocol.
No, and he also hadn't read all the research. So when the movie starts, you don't get any context to begin with. Like it starts with him just like this weird looking dude with the worst fake looking plastic nose you've ever seen in your life, entering it in and demanding a room. And then it's revealed that he's invisible and he's trying to do experiments. And like through that, his tantrums, you understand that he experimented himself. You understand that he was trying to find the reverse, the visibility cure to the invisibility. And you are revealed that like when his boss and his other cohort were trying to figure out where this guy went, because he just basically left him alone and said like, yeah, I'm out of here for a while, I'll be back in a few. He didn't give an explanation. They found a list of ingredients, a list of chemicals, and on them was one that the main scientist that he was working for originally for the food preservation was like, oh no, this causes insanity. There's studies, it's supposed to be a bleaching agent that you inject or put on something and it makes everything white suddenly. But there's this obscure German experiment that was done that he may not have read, which clearly he didn't, that they did on a dog, and it drove the dog start raving mad as well as turning it ghost white. So yeah, he didn't thoroughly research the chemicals he used.
Bad science.
Says the scientist. So to be clear, Rebecca Cunningham here is in fact a scientist. So
my job title and everything.
Yep. Legit credentials there. So yeah, bad science all around. And also, you know, again, not that I'm an advocate of experimenting on animals, but your next go-to should not probably be yourself.
Don't jump from the test tube to your arm. It's just bad. Figure out some intermediary stuff. Maybe test it on plants. They're living.
You can't really hear them scream, though it's actually documented that some of them do.
Which is terrifying. But, you know,
every time you bite your lettuce. No. Murdering blades of grass as you mow your lawn. I'm digressing. I apologize. You were saying that.
Can I use that as an excuse to not mow my lawn anymore? Like, I'm sorry, I cannot mow because
works for me.
I can hear them scream.
And you're also trying to create a habitat for bees and wildlife.
I have said that, but my neighbors don't believe me, and then they call the city. So, you know, it is what it is. No, I think it's all really, really funny. Like the several conversations that are had around he's a crappy scientist. Multiple times they're like, but he wasn't a good scientist to begin with. Like,
no, he
did this thing, but he's not a great scientist. And I thought, I'm like, I like that they just keep driving it home. Like, science is not bad in itself. He's a bad scientist.
Yep. And I love how the narcissism was very clear. So anytime anything happens, it's always somebody else's fault, or they deserved whatever he's done to them. So whether it's beating them, killing them, throwing their stuff around, bad mouthing them, the victims of his abuse or, you know, his tantrums deserved it. It's never him.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
Never him. And also the way he treats his fiance. Like,
right.
Like, she's an afterthought at best. And if you've been in a relationship with a narcissist, you understand this. I will say he was kinder to her than most narcissists are when she was in the picture. You know what I mean? Like
the little bit that
remember?
We saw. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas like if again, those of us who've been in relationship with narcissists know that generally speaking, it's not that they're always cruel all the time, but there's usually not a full conversation that happens where somehow you are not made to understand that you either are less than them or should be really grateful that you have them in your lives. There's some flaw in you that they're fixing, you know.
You had the temerity to speak to them while they were tuning their instruments, and now you're subjected to a 2-hour silent car ride. Yeah.
Or like there's a lovely scene where she's trying to convince him to let her father and his cohort, Dr. Kemp, also help with it. And, you know, she doesn't attack her, but he calls her father a moron. And it's like, it's not remotely clever. He's an idiot and these people can't help. And, you know, whereas a lot of narcissists, to add to that, not only would they call the other people morons in how they couldn't help, they would also attack you for bringing up such a stupid suggestion. And how could you not know better? And to be fair to the character, Griffith, which is the Invisible Man, does not do that. He just attacks where he is obviously superior to her father, and her father is not actually clever. He's stupid, but because he, of course, is the genius scientist, so he does not need their assistance. Though he did need a visible partner in Kemp.
An interesting casting note for the woman playing his fiancee, Gloria Stewart. She had worked with him actually previously in his movie This Old Dark House, I think is what it was. And most of you are going to know her as the elderly Rose in Titanic.
I was gonna say she was in Titanic.
Yeah.
I've never watched it, so I wouldn't know her as it, but that's interesting to me.
Yeah. She, I'm trying to remember. God, I don't know how old she was at that point in time, but
I said she
probably
had
in
to
her
be in her
80s.
80s.
Yeah, she had to be in her 80s because if she was in her 20s and the early 30s.
33.
Yeah.
What was Titanic? Sometime in the 90s?
97 or 98.
Yeah,
I think
so I would
98.
say 80s is a good call for that.
Yeah.
Like sometime. I have seen pieces of the movie Titanic. I've never sat down and watched the whole thing. It just wasn't interesting to me. Though I'm fascinated by the Titanic in general, for whatever morbid reasons. I prefer like the horror movies based on the Titanic to the romance movies.
She was
Sorry.
86 when she played it. Here's how I recommend watching the Titanic, and this is going to make me sound like an asshole. So what I recommend is you buy it on the 2 VHS set and only watch the second VHS because that's just the Titanic sinking. You get to skip all of the romance crap and just
skip
the sinking of the
straight to the
Titanic.
adventure.
Yeah, it's just the sinking of the Titanic. Swear to God. Just make sure you.
So for those of you who might like predate the VCR, VHS tapes, we used to actually have like large looking cassette tapes that were like thick and stick into a thing called a VCR.
In like 10 seconds. Hold on. I'm such a sad person that way, but I won't. But
which was kind of edifying because, like, when you hit the rewind button, you can hear the tape go back, which we don't have that anymore with streaming or CDs or DVDs or any of that. But and I don't mean to be condescending. And in all reality, we probably only have 2 viewers, and they're probably around our age. So, but if you do know, if you're somebody younger watching this, and you're like, "What is a VHS tape?" That is
but
there's also a horror movie called VHS, so there's another fun thing.
You also have to know that the movie Titanic was so friggin' long that they couldn't put it on one VHS tape and keep the quality of the movie. So they had to split it in 2, and you had part A and part B. So part A was all of the Rose and Jack and the romance and the drama on the boat. And then part B was literally basically from when they hit the iceberg on. So the part.
So fun trivia on that one, and you can see Gloria Stewart in her lovely 80s, which I bet you she was still amazing.
She was an amazing actress, amazing. So and still incandescent even at 86.
Yeah, I believe it. She's really beautiful. I loved her wardrobe too. Her one nightgown I would have just worn around like everywhere. It was a nice little like medieval flowy gown. I'm like, I would wear that out. But shout out to Claude Rains though. So you don't actually see Claude Rains physically until the very end of the movie when he dies. But he, even though not visible, what he did with his voice, just the moods and like you can hear him going from not insane to sane, or not insane to insane. Like the voice fluctuation, the way it changed, the tone, the pitch was very distinct, very clear, and just amazing.
It was an excellent piece of voice acting. It really was. And I have to wonder if his theater background came into play with that. Because primarily before this, he'd primarily been working in Britain, mostly as a stage actor, and he was relatively unknown in the US when he got this role. In fact, he got it because he had taken a screen test. He had taken a screen test for something else, and it was. And they said he did a horrible job, overblown, overly dramatic, and this and that, what have you. And James Whale watched the screen test. He's like, "This guy, I want this guy to play my main." Oh,
because that's what you needed for this. If he'd have done it light, you can't, because there's no facial expression to tell the story. There's no really even Bobby to tell the story most of the time.
Agree.
I think my favorite scene in the whole thing is when he's stripping in front of the cops, just taking off more and more clothing. And then at one point he's just a shirt running around giggling like a maniac. Probably my favorite scene. But the less he had on, the more emotive he was. And the funnier it was, but then you're also like, oh, this man is losing his shit right now. You're literally watching a man descend into madness.
Yeah, he is off his rocker.
But, I love the part also when he escaped the cops one time after he stole the cops' pants, and you just see a pair of pants singing a silly song going
down the road.
You can't see him bobbing along, but you could feel that as he's singing that song, he's like, like just.
It's the special effects in this movie. I don't think anybody's. I think people are going to realize that for the 1933, the stuff was groundbreaking.
Oh, it holds today. You know,
I agree.
It's like
agree.
Like I don't think there's anything like when you watch Invisible Man 2020. It's like I'm sure they did it differently with green screen and all that stuff and digital, but what they do is very similar to what you see here. And here it had to be mostly practical effects.
Yeah.
You know, this is 1933. They don't have green screen. You know, they don't have digital insertion.
No, they
they had wires and like something to put seat pressure down. And
they had a lot of the work was done by wires, and some of those close-up shots in rooms were done by stagehands. Like you would have a stagehand be just out of the camera frame, pushing a chair forward, to indicate somebody's scooting their chair forward. The bike scene where you see this bike going down the road. They had the bike on wires and a pre-installed hidden track, which I could see the track, but that's only because I knew what to look for.
Yeah.
And
it's like you can basically see wires if you really look, but still,
but not much either. Yeah, you'd have to know what you were looking for. And I don't think a 1930s audience would.
Absolutely not.
And then there was the scene where he's in front of the mirror and he's undressing. They had to take 4 separate reels of that because you had to get different aspects in each shot. And then they had to basically edit those layers and put them all together into those final frames that you saw for that. And there were still a lot of times where editors had to go in frame by frame and were like painting in little bits of opaque dye to blot out certain things. So it was
revolutionary.
Can you imagine? Just the time and the like sitting and just frame by frame.
And the brilliance of figuring it out,
Yes. How you can even make it work. Like so good. So good.
It was fantastic. And it was amazing.
A lot of unsung back there. Also, even the costuming unsung. When you think about what made the Invisible Man, when he's clothed, he's very dapper. You can tell he's Bane from how they costumed him. Up to the point, even when he starts out where he has to have a toupee because he didn't want to be hairless and like the weird fake plastic nose. And then when he's like at Kemp's house where, he's in his smoking jacket and dapper and like it's not plain. He doesn't just like, let me just throw on a shirt, like
the way the Invisible Man carries himself.
All very
when you see him.
Just added to the characterization of it. It was, just stuff that like, and I don't think costume is even credited in this film. So I don't even know who did it, but it still was like, wow, no, this was really great. But the other thing, so like mad scientists were kind of a theme throughout like old horror. When you think about it, you have, Victor Frankenstein, you have Griffin and the Invisible Man, you have, sorry, my brain just blanked, but there's more of them.
You see it across other films. Over and over again.
And you'll see it in Doctors and stuff like that. Like I think it's called Shock or Shocker that Vincent Price was in later, where he plays like not really a mad scientist, but he plays a mad psychologist. So still, so it's just not a new theme, and you see it, and but it's also it's never gone away in the sense that like the reason for the warning of it is still true and it still happens. So when you think about it, this time you're looking at like innovations for wars were happening around the 30s, and they led up into 45, like in the 40s, where you end up, warfare was getting more and more mad scientists and what they were doing. When you think about what the Nazis were doing, you think about eugenics and what scientists were doing with that, which also fed into what the Nazis were doing. And, you think about how the reason why they made that distinction, or the reason why I believe James Whale probably made a real clear distinction, that there's good science and there was bad science, not like poorly performed science, but like science for good and science for not good, science for evil.
Yes.
And even in like one of Griffin's, the Invisible Man's speech, where he talks about, actually when he's with Flora, when she's trying to calm him down and convince him to let, people help him, he's going on about how he can sell his, formula to the highest bidder, and they can have invisible armies and rule the world. And, and when you think about that, when you think about machine guns and bombs and the way warfare went, and just today, even, and like, I don't want to say in a milder sense, but in a less obvious sense, when you think about our current mad scientists, in the sense of like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, all these people that have all this money that they could be using to do so many good things. And what are they really doing with it? Are they doing it for the betterment of man? No, they're doing it for the betterment for their own profit. And it just gets worse and worse. And everything they seem to back and pat, even though they're like, oh, it'll help the world, but it's really only helping them, especially with the restrictions and stuff that they put on it, and the way they data mine, and, the privacy infringements they take to try to do more, and the marketing they do. They could be ending world hunger, could be revolutionizing the world. They could, but they're not.
They could be doing something useful.
They're padding their own pockets and expanding the class gap is all they're doing. So, well, I shouldn't say it's all they're doing. I won't say there aren't some residual benefits, but there are residual benefits if you're the right persons with the right money in the right place. So it's not.
They're not doing it for our benefit.
No, certainly not.
So it's interesting, shall we say. Like when COVID came out, they could have been funding, like they could have been like Dolly Parton funding vaccines and cures and make sure they got everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't, And it's not to say they don't ever do anything potentially good, but they don't, that's not their focus,
No.
If it happens, it's because it happened by accident.
Well, or in the case where it was like literally they were called out and they could, and I think they got the power trip. When you think about Elon Musk, and was it Starnet where he had his satellite internet where he shut it down over Russia? Mm-hmm. I mean, I would say that yes, it was a nice gesture for the Ukrainian people, and it was good that he did it. But I would expect part of it was megalomania, where he probably felt kind of like God being able to shut it down over Russia.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah,
probably pretty accurate.
So, when you think about the horrors of the powerful and the horrors of science, it just the horrors of the wealthy,
it's the themes present in the movie still resonate today, are still very applicable.
Still a problem.
Yeah. We haven't managed to solve them yet.
No, certainly not.
Yeah. Or even when a scientist does something for good, somebody else will take it over and patent it and profit it, like insulin done to help people. Now the pharmaceutical company owns it, and if you need it to live, which if you're type 1 diabetic and some type 2 diabetics for that matter, you do need it to live, and you can't afford it because they think you'll pay any price, which is true, you would if you could. But if you don't have the money, you die. It's like if Jonas Salk felt that way when he made the polio vaccine. Think about how many people in the world now.
My mother remembers people with polio, remembers people getting it, people she knew.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was very widespread.
Yeah.
Very, very widespread. There was a point where there was a good chance you were going to end up with polio. And thank God we never saw it in our lifetimes, but
it was definitely real for our parents, or at least my parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those of us who are older, yeah.
So, but yeah, and so Jonas Salk would be an example of a good scientist.
A good scientist doing good
Definitely.
science. Good.
Yes, he did good science work.
But and I don't know if there's much more to say other than definitely watch The Invisible Man. It's so good.
we do have to talk about one person.
Yeah,
Go
this
for
We
is
it.
have
more-
to talk about the innkeeper's wife.
Absolutely.
Who is
Her,
named Jenny, and this is why I hate my name, by the way.
Yes, Jenny, who screeched through the entire movie. This film.
Apparently,
You kind of
yeah.
wanted Griffin to kill her, just to shut her the fuck up.
Yes. Apparently, James Whale was just absolutely loved her performances in it. The
I
the
find she was in
comedic, the
Frankenstein
comedic,
too.
the comedic overblown-esque.
Oh, she was amazing.
Oh yeah, she
And
was an
her-
excellent actress. Don't take away from that. But
Yeah.
oh god.
But you're like, can somebody just like give her a Valium or something? Did they have Valium in the 1930s? I don't know.
Opium.
After
My-
she
Yeah.
screamed and
Little
screamed and screamed, and then
heroin
her husband gets pushed down the steps, and then he's got
There's
to
more screaming and wailing and
When he kills the cop in the inn and everybody's running out, she's too busy screaming to run out until the very end. That's how much screaming is.
Yep.
And then she's like, "Don't leave me." Like, you're just standing there screaming. What are they supposed to do with you?
yeah.
But
But
I
they
have
just
to
bundle
look it
you
up.
under their arm and carry you out.
But
Not
I'm
when you're
pretty sure the actress shows up in Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein as well as like a housekeeper or something, but I could be wrong. Like, I think
have
she
to
might have been
double-
okay with James Whale.
I'd have to double check the
Here, I
cast
am.
list, but
looking right now. Hold on. Let's see where she
Okay.
is.
But
Her
yeah,
name is
but
Vera O'Connor.
Yeah.
or he just liked that type of character and there was another similar looking actress. in
Oh no,
Frankenstein.
definitely. She was in The Bride of Frankenstein. She plays Minnie.
Okay.
Let's see. Good Lord, she did a lot. Hold on.
Yeah, I mean, she's very familiar looking. I think she was probably a character actress throughout this whole time doing, especially these genres.
I have
think
this
she almost
feeling like she really nailed that sort of maid
Excitable,
housekeeper
innkeeper's wife,
role.
hysterical.
Yes.
Yeah, she was hilarious, but like it was just
Every
So
time she
lit.
screamed, I laughed. I was like, woman.
so your drinking game for the
Yeah.
Invisible Man 1933 is anytime Jenny the innkeeper screams.
Beware, you might want to
Take a
water
shot.
your drinks down a little bit because we don't want you to get alcohol poisoning.
Seriously, that one time she screams, and she basically screams just because she's mad. And she's like, he attacked me. And I'm like, he did not attack you. He just didn't want you to come in, and you insisted upon trying to push in. And he was like, no, and shut the door in your face. That's what you get. He said no.
And there was another time where she was like screaming and she like gets up on the table and is running around on the table screaming.
Yep. That's
She
when he came
definitely
back.
had
and killed
the
cop.
she definitely had the over the top
Yeah.
acting.
Yeah,
down
she was
pat.
wild. It was very funny. I especially liked that they juxtaposed her with the innkeeper who, Mr. Hall, who was like,
Very calm.
well, you haven't really paid your bill, and so we're probably going to need you to go. And he's like, I don't think it's going to be an issue. And he's like, well, I think it is. And then he pushes him down the steps. And then she screams in his concussed face forever. So, it's a good time.
She clearly has excellent breath control because she can hold that scream out like an opera singer holding a note. It's amazing.
She knows her projection. It's all coming from that core there. She's got it down pat.
I do kind of wonder how many of these people are people that James Whale was like, hey, do you remember when we did that show together? Do you think you could do that on screen now? Because he did a
I
lot
would
of theater
not
work.
be
A lot of theater work.
surprised if
Yes.
that was fairly a lot of the cast.
Yeah. But yeah. It's interesting. I want to say it's a fun movie, which is true and not true, because it's also a very scary movie on several levels, but they put in enough camp to lighten it a little. But when you think about, which is actually explored in a lot of later Invisible Man movies, the real terror of somebody being able to run around completely unseen and wreak havoc, and how that would give them a god complex for sure. But like there's been later movies, I think it was Hollow Man, where they actually have, as they're invisible, they rape a woman. And just, I hate to bring that, but like rape in itself is bad enough, but could you imagine if you could not even see your attacker? Like not
Right.
because you're blindfolded and not because if it
Yeah.
like, literally you're being attacked and can't see them. And yeah, and like even Invisible Man 2020, where they combine it with an actual abuser
That one was
prior to
rough.
him going invisible, and how,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like you want to talk, you know, on a different podcast, we paired that with Gaslight, because it was the extreme gaslighting, you know, like literally driving this woman insane, or even to seem insane, because he literally is invisible doing stuff, and who's going to listen to
Yep.
anybody? Like it's funny because like in this movie they make it a little bit like the first time they call the constable and stuff on it, people are like, oh, there's clearly a sickness going on in the city where
Mass
this kid believes there's
hysteria.
Invisible Man.
Yeah.
But quickly it gets enough believed to bring the constable out to begin with, you know, and then of course the constable's like, we can't find anything. Well, it's an invisible man, but still, and like then he keeps thinking the city's like made it a hoax, the little village made a hoax up, until he gets murdered by the invisible man. But like when you think about modern age, like there's nobody would believe you.
No, you
like,
you
would be committed.
Yeah, you'd get put on an involuntary hold.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
And, yeah, they would not send out a cop to check it out.
Yeah.
They would send out a cop
to a wellness check on you, and then take you away.
Yeah.
You'd be under conservatorship.
We kind of talked about it, but a lot of these films, especially the monster films, which this is considered like a universal monster film, you feel a real deep empathy for the monster, because you realize like they're not in control here. Like the creature from the Black Lagoon is a creature out of space, out of time. Like this is not,
and they've invaded his territory.
Correct. Frankenstein did not, or Frankenstein's monster, the monster did not ask to be created. He is a product of what happened to him. Even Dracula, to a degree, you feel some kind of an empathy for, because this is something that has happened to him, and then he's dealing with whatever. I have no empathy for this character, which is kind of fun.
No,
yeah,
it's
nice to have a true villain every now and then.
Everything that he's doing, he has earned. Like he earns the bad things that happen to him, because he's being so, like you said, he's such a megalomaniac about it. And I think it's a really interesting, it makes it really interesting in the canon of the monster films to watch one where you're like, oh, but he's really the bad guy. Because a lot of times
it brings home the point that yes, we indeed are the monsters.
Right. Because he's
humanity.
also the most human of the monsters.
Jekyll and Hyde was also the other bad scientist that I was trying to come up with.
Yes. Jekyll and Hyde.
Bad scientist.
Yep, there you go.
Sorry. Anyway, back to what we're talking about.
You had to stop thinking about it to be able to remember it.
But you're absolutely right, though. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is another one where it's the same thing, kind of, because Dr. Jekyll creates Mr. Hyde.
Mm-hmm.
And then he spends a whole lot of time pretending like that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But you feel bad for
you
Dr.
have
Jekyll.
a little more empathy for Dr. Jekyll because he is horrified by what he did.
Absolutely. Where this guy just revels in what he's doing. He's having a great time because no one will catch him. He has hubris.
Yeah. And also, to be fair to Dr. Jekyll, he was doing it to try to find a way to stop people from being violent and crazy, to separate it out.
Right. I was going to add that in. That's what I thought. He was working with good motives to start with.
Oh, yeah. No, he had good motives to start with, which our guy did not.
Griffin here, the Invisible Man, his whole thing was just he wanted to be a star, powerful, the person.
He wanted money. He wanted fame. He wanted infamy, even. Which, I mean, I think he did achieve infamy.
Yeah. Which actually, back to the point of narcissism, where he did really show himself again as a narcissist, is that when Flora, his fiance, is back in the picture for a few seconds and he's talking with her, he actually says, I did it for you, almost again, sort of throwing the blame. Like, so I would have the money to be able to marry you because I was so poor, and I get it. I've been poor. I haven't been as poor as some poor people have been poor, but I have been, poor.
Right.
But I don't have the desire to be in charge of anybody or a megalomaniac either, maybe because I don't have the science brain. I don't know. But
it's too much responsibility.
Yeah. Which is the difference, because we see the accountability part of it, whereas someone like him has no accountability.
Yeah.
Because they're a narcissist.
That honestly just makes me think of like Ebenezer Scrooge from A Christmas Carol, where he's like constantly putting off the girl that he was engaged to, like, oh no, it's just I'm trying to get more money. I'm trying to get more money so that we can be happy. And she's like, look, you have done all the things that you said that you wanted to do. At this point, you're just putting me off, and so we are done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Flora hasn't reached that point yet, but that's because I don't know that she's sweeter than the girl in A Christmas Carol, apparently, but it does make me think of that kind of a character where it's like, but I'm doing all of this for you. And then you're like, no, honey, you're doing this for you.
For yourself.
You're doing it for you. And you're using me as an excuse. And I'm done being your excuse for being a crappy person. So.
Except Flora doesn't go there.
Except Flora doesn't do that.
Yeah, I guess actually we should probably explore Kemp for a little bit too. You want to talk about another trashy character. This guy, obviously clearly not as narcissistic and evil as Griffin, but clearly does have a tinge of narcissism and incel kind of too way, like, you know, like the beginning of the movie when
trying to get into,
Flora's bed.
Yeah, into Flora's affections in her bed while her intended is away. He's planting all these seeds of doubt.
Which is horrible the way he does it. She's clearly distressed at Griffin being gone. She's very sad. She's trying to find out what happened. And then like she's like in the parlor, and what does Kemp do? He comes out, he's like, this guy never cared about you. Not in a way a friend would do it for you, like to soothe you and be like, growing and wasting your tears over the guy. But in a look at me kind of way, like, I'm the nice guy. Why are you ignoring me? It's throwing
she's like that.
Yeah.
And I love that she girlfriend zoned you thing. Like
basically she tells him to fuck off, and I love it. Like it was the strongest I have ever seen, like in that genre of a woman looking at a guy telling him just to get the hell out. Like, because he's like throwing himself at her, kind of basically telling her how he loves her, he should have her, and she's like,
she's not having any of it
alone. Like flat out, no, like, oh, I can't talk about this now. She hollers at him to get that fuck out, basically.
Yeah, she does. And then she like
which was glorious.
Puts her face in a pillow, like, this is over, bonk. And I'm like, girl. That also, I loved that actor's reaction to the face plant, because he stands up and is like in a bush for a minute. Yeah. And they fly away. And I'm like, there's like that second where he's just like standing in a bush, like, well, now what?
How like total shock that she would reject him so thoroughly and not even discuss it with him.
Yeah, she went straight for the. She did not waste time. She did what we all envy, and we all always wish we could do, is like, look, just fuck off.
Yeah.
Hey,
well, no, I do that now, but
well, we do that now.
But yeah, we've all done it.
Always.
We have all not done it and wished we had, to be fair. I shouldn't speak for all of us, but I'm guessing that I'm correct saying that we have all at some point wanted to tell them to fuck off. And whether because we didn't have our voice then, or we had to moderate it because danger was apparent.
Yes, we judged the situation unsafe, which happens frequently.
Yeah, just something to understand if you've not been in this position. I don't want to say if you've not been a woman, because you might have experienced this as a man, or you may not identify as either and have experienced it. That's all beautiful, except for that you had to experience this. But there's a point where you know that if you directly tell somebody no, they're going to come at you. And if you're not in a good position to be able to fend them off, fight, defend yourself, or get assistance, you have to finagle your way out of it verbally if you can. And that may not save you either. So, and actually for Pride Month, I am positive that probably everybody in the LGBTQIA community has experienced this, and it sucks, and it's terrifying, and it should not be, and it is. So, so it's very edifying to see on screen somebody who generally is not empowered have the freedom to tell a person to fuck off and then face plant into a pillow.
Yeah, it was good.
The face plant afterwards was really just made the moment.
Oh, it did. She just like went, and I'm like, oh girl, get it. I agree.
It was comically beautiful to see, and plus the way it just totally shut this dude down. Like there was no chance for him to converse with her further when she did that. It was like slamming a door in his face. It was just beautiful.
It was great. Yeah, he is such a beautiful slimy person in general.
Yeah, later on when he gets his comeuppance in the film, you're not really sad about it.
Yeah, he's a slimy coward. So there is this fun bit where, again, so you could also tell that Griffin, the Invisible Man, is completely crazed because he has no idea of the type of person Kemp is. Like, it doesn't dawn on him at all that this guy is a slimy coward, in my opinion. Like, or that he would not want to go along with Griffin's plan. Like, so the Invisible Man is so out of depth. He just shows up at Kemp's door. Well, shows up. Relatively speaking, he walks into the window invisible,
Yeah,
and just starts telling Kemp what's going to happen. You know, hey, you're going to be my visible partner because I need somebody who can be seen to do some of this stuff. This is what we're going to do. We're going to wreak terror. Like, basically lines out that he's just going to randomly murder people, and kind of egalitarian in his plan to murder. He's like, we're going to do some people that are powerful at the top and just random like bums on the street. We're going to just wreak it so they don't know where we're going to attack, period. And it's just, we're going to rain terror down on the whole, well, city, country, world, you know, in general. And you're going to be my partner in this. And this is what I want you to do. You're going to get me this bandage. You're going to do this. You're going to be thinking, I'm going to go to sleep. You're going to feed me these 2 times, you know, like, just lines it up for him. And he expects Kemp to go along, which he's right. Kemp's going to at this point because he's terrified because this guy is a slimy little coward.
well, he's also threatening him to make him go along with it as well.
Not exactly. Like, yeah, he
In
does
the
threaten him
beginning
to sit his
because
ass
he's
down
like-
or I'm going to hit you. Like, he will sit down
Yeah.
and listen to me or I'm going to hit you. But when he's laying out his plan, he does. Yeah, I mean, obviously he did the original threat, like, I will hit you with this fire poker. But in his tone, it's just like he feels that Kemp would want to be a piece of it. Like, that's how the tone you get from it. Like, the conversation, this guy, that Griffin kind of feels like Kemp would want to be part of it, you know, because even when Kemp betrays him, he's like sort of shocked. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Well,
Like,
he
I
says,
thought,
he says
thought we
though,
had
at
a
one point,
reason.
I knew what kind of man you are.
but he didn't, I don't think.
Oh.
I think he meant it in the sense that he thinks that he knew that Kemp would want power as well, and he'd be able to have it this way. And he also knew, I mean, he probably knew it a little because originally he's like trying to rein Kemp in. He's like, don't go for the door. Just do what I told you because I could be anywhere and I will kill you if you do anything else.
Right.
You know, so I mean, you're right, that threat is there, but it
Yeah.
also, like, a lot of the subtext is that you want to be a piece of this anyway. But Kemp really didn't. To be fair to Kemp, but he
Yeah.
also was like a complete coward. Like, he
Right.
finally gets the balls to call. I can't remember Flora's dad's name, the doctor they were working for, but we'll just call him Dr. Preservative because that's what he was working on. And also, okay, so to be fair, as powerful as Flora was in her dismissal of Kemp, she was also very much an afterthought in all the men's lives. You know what I mean? So, like, her father is not keeping her abreast of the situation. When she comes in and asks, you know, what's going on, her dad's like, oh, Flora, go away.
Yeah.
And she really was pivotal because, you know, she went and she was able to some degree talk Griffin down a little bit until, like, again, the megalomania and narcissism kicked in and boom, it was down. But
Yeah.
she did have a calming influence on him for sure.
If she'd had maybe a little more time, maybe
Before the
she
cops
would've come up
came,
with
she might have
something. Yeah.
been able to, yeah, get him to at least comply for a little bit.
For a minute.
Yeah. But yeah, but he waits, like, Kemp waits a very long time to even call them. And then also Dr. Preservative did not have a realistic handle on the situation either. Because, you know,
No.
Kemp calls him, it's already been in the news that Griffin, as the Invisible Man, has killed people. And Dr. Preservative is like, you know, just keep him calm. We'll come over tomorrow and deal with it.
I don't think he realizes the gravity of the situation.
Yeah,
that
it's
he's in.
fine. And poor Kemp's like, tomorrow? He's like, come over now.
Oh,
And
fuck
like,
tomorrow.
Dr. Preserver's like, well, now if we come over now, he'll be suspicious. And Kemp's like, this man's gonna kill me. Like, to be fair to Kemp, he was right to be somewhat worried.
Right. He's
then
like,
he
no, I'm
calls
gonna be dead
Yeah.
by the time you get here tomorrow. Are you crazy?
So then he calls the cops, and the cops also are very dismissive. Like, we only got 5 people here. I don't know what you expect me to do. Very, very much the cops.
Like
you know what I mean?
today,
Like,
yeah.
oh,
Some
you
things never
haven't been?
change.
We'll get there eventually, man. No worries. Thanks for calling the emergency line for help, because we'll be there as soon
Yeah.
as we get there.
Someday.
But yeah, and so Kemp, in case, you know, you don't watch the movie, which you should, Kemp gets
Just watch
killed. And it's funny because the Invisible Man also tells him, I'm going to come back. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you at 10 o'clock tonight. Like, which, to be fair to the cops, they try to make a plan then. They're like, all right, we know he's coming after Kemp at 10, but Kemp is so terrified that he won't follow the plan. And it may not have helped anyway, but he, they come up with this other plan that doesn't work. Like they're like, we'll bring you to the station and keep you there and keep you safe. And Kemp's like, I won't be safe there. He could be anywhere. He could be, they checked the room with a net to make sure he wasn't in the room where they were discussing the plan. And Kemp's like, no, this is not going to work there. All right, we'll bring you to the station. We'll dress you up like a cop. We'll take you out the back door. We'll bring you back to your house and you can go. And this to Kemp was the better plan, which is not, Kemp clearly wasn't bright. Like, actually, he would have probably fared better had he been in the police station, but because they could have done several things. I mean, they could have Scooby-Doo trapped the Invisible Man in the police station. I'm just saying.
A flower bomb on a door.
Yeah, the fishing net, flower bomb, sack on the ground, rabbit trap. There was options in a smaller, more confined place besides, but as soon as he ran out the door. So what the Invisible Man did was he followed him from his house, saw him go to the police station, saw him come out the police station, jumped on the car that the police were driving back on, and then waited in the car for Kemp to get into his car and then strangled him right at the tone of 10 o'clock. And then shoved the car off a cliff, basically. Drove the car off a cliff.
Yep.
So poor Kemp. Didn't get Flora, didn't get to live, didn't get any power, didn't get any money. Though he clearly had money to begin with, though, because he had a hell of a house.
I at that point, if you were heavily involved in science, you probably had some money.
Probably.
Unless you're a Griffin, who was a poor scientist.
Yeah, or a patron.
Yeah. But the other funny thing is, I still find it amusing that the cure for the invisibleness was dying, because then the drug would stop working on you.
It wasn't so much as a cure as it was, oh, well, it's obviously you can't work anymore because you're dead.
Yeah, that doesn't logically make sense to me.
Oh.
I mean, because any kind of drug will stay in your system even when you're dead.
Honestly,
at least for a
think
period.
it was just we have to show Claude Rains' face.
Claude Rains' face at some point.
Yes.
In this film.
Yeah.
And so it wears off, question mark?
Because in theory it should wear off while you're living. You know what I mean? Like, if it wears off dead tissue, it should wear off of actual metabolizing.
Agree.
But yeah.
Agree.
Which, who knows, maybe he was such a dumb scientist, he never thought about stopping injecting himself.
Here we go. It's when the heart stops moving it through the body, it's no longer cycling, and therefore it's just sitting there dormant and shuts down. Here we go.
Right.
I've solved it. Doesn't make any sense.
Movie logic will go
cool.
with it.
To be fair, it was cool how they had his bones come back first, and then then you have Claude Rains.
Came from
it was
the
really
inside out back. Muscles.
It looked like they did it with an X-ray. It was really neat.
It was actually very cool. I liked that effect. It was very cool. And also, how good looking was Claude Rains? He was very good looking.
Young Claude Rains was a hottie.
He was a hottie. He was a good looking dude. I was like, all right.
Yeah,
I see you're Flora. I mean, you forgive a lot when he's that good looking. I get it, girl.
For that scene, I think they actually used a mask of him for part of it, because they had to take a mold of his face at one point, and he said, because I think it was his daughter on the film commentary, he said it was one of the worst experiences of his life because he was heavily claustrophobic.
Oh, poor guy.
Yeah, and he had to breathe with straws up his nose, that kind of thing. I would not be able to do that. I'd be like, nope, we're done. I'd be okay till about here, and once you got here, I'd be like, nope.
There was a famous actress, and I can't remember who it was, but they were doing that. They were doing the rubber to make a plastic mold of her face, and she was they got them almost all on, and she's like, I've got a tap. I'm having a freak out. I'm literally having so they had to pull, they were just ripping it off of her face because she was flipping out. I can't remember who it was, but it was for some show. They were going to make a mask for her, something very specific, horror related. And she's like, nope, not going to happen. Sorry, guys.
Like I said, I'd have to really concentrate on breathing exercises and meditating to be able to, and I don't know that would work for me, but there's a chance I might be able to get through it that way.
I was going to say, I think If I
I
can
would
get
have
through a
to be
tattoo, I think I could do
sedated.
it.
I would have to be sedated, I think.
I think I could do it. As long as you don't do my ears, which sounds weird, but as long as it's
Well, no,
like
because then you
this,
feel
Ugh, that
as long
sounds
as it's like
awful.
this, I think I'd be fine. But if they got into my ears, then I would be like, all right, we have a problem now because I can't hear anything either. Then we'd have. You can't shut down
But
all of my senses and expect me to be okay.
yeah, you need to have something. I'll be grabbing somebody or something. Anyway, yeah, so really great movie. I forgot why it was good. Like I have, of all the like classic horror movies, I have not watched Invisible Man in the longest length of time. Like I think it's probably been at least 20 years since I've watched it. And
wow.
because I tend to prioritize Dracula, the Mummy, Frankenstein. And in all honesty, like having rewatched this, there's a lot more going on here than those ones. You know what I mean? There's a lot more subtle horror in it. There's a lot more
It's a lot more.
back.
It's more complex
Yeah,
as a film, I
a
believe.
lot more depth. A lot, yeah. It just, and it's not to take away from the other ones. It's not. I love them and I will always love them. But like this one has a lot more complexity to it when you're watching it.
This one, the horror feels more. I'm sorry. The horror feels more real.
Yeah.
And I think
it's
part of it is
more
because
relatable.
He's invisible, but he's just a man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a monster. He's not something mythic. He's just a man who's been changed. And then he does horrible things as a man.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that, I think, makes it more horrible. Yeah.
Makes
because
it worse.
it's like, yeah, because you can relate to that. You can say, oh, yeah, a man who does horrible things. He's essentially a serial killer. He's a serial killer who can make himself invisible, which is very scary. That's a very scary monster.
And when you think about all the invisible abuses that happen all the time that nobody listens to you about, you know, like if you don't have bruises, nobody will listen to you that there's abuse, you know, if it can't be seen. And then even when it can be, there's always a blame the victim thing that happens, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a lot of analogies with this, you know, and it's the same reason why Gaslight was so terrifying to me. You know, it's just the fact that somebody, and also when you think about people with money and power, I mean, when you think about our politicians, when they get all the rights that they strip, the effects of what they're doing, like in Ohio, in the budget, there's put in there that like healthcare workers basically can choose not to care for people that they differ with, basically. Like if they don't agree with like homosexuality, then they can just, and they know you're gay, they cannot help you. And like everyone's like, well, then go to another doctor. What if you don't have a choice?
Yeah.
We're, you know, I mean, and I just think of these invisible horrors, and
or
all
you're
of a sudden
in the
you're like,
ER, and this is who's there to serve you that night.
yeah,
It's not like you have hours and hours to say, okay, can we get another doctor in here because they don't believe in my life.
You're already in a time critical situation at that point. Yeah.
Right. Like
bad.
that's
heartbeat bills, the potential and realistic reversal of Roe versus Wade that's up and coming, that, you know, what they do to the trans community, where they're like, well, we think that you're actually not biologically a female, then we have the right to examine you to find out. I mean, think of the abuses behind that.
Mm-hmm.
Any little sicko that wants to put his fingers in a little girl can do it that way, you know. Well, we think she's trans.
From what I'm hearing from like parents for that one, they're like, I'm just not going to have my daughters play sports anymore.
Which is another
because
horror.
They're like, what if somebody just maliciously points to my daughter?
Exactly.
Like, oh, she's trans. And she's not. But you should
not that they should be able to do it to you if you're trans, to be clear.
No, you shouldn't be able to do it to anyone.
Anybody.
Little boys, you know, but there's no one.
Yeah. But the solution being, so now your kid's not gonna be able to play sports. So that's limiting women and yet and women trans regardless in another way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Removing us from yet another public aspect of life.
Yes.
And
so to me, these are all invisible horrors, and I guess it seems weird, but that's what when I watch The Invisible Man, these invisible horrors come to my mind, because it's all like the same thing. It's a perpetration where you can't really see it and you can't stop it, and it's
how do you fight horrifying. What you can't see?
Yeah. How do you stop? Especially things when they put it into the fucking state budget, like you don't even get to, you know. If somebody else wasn't watching out for it,
it's not a bill. It's not.
Yeah, you can't vote against it. You vote for the budget or you don't vote for the budget. And the gerrymandering of Ohio, so like we're a red state, when we shouldn't be.
Yep.
It's just, yeah, it's,
I know.
Yep.
that's why I get so mad when conservatives say, we're trying to protect rights. You take all the rights away.
You're only trying to protect
Take
the
them all
rights for yourself. So you
Yeah.
can do what you want to, but other people are not afforded the same luxury.
Correct.
And what you want to do is discriminate based on your
And-
extremely narrow viewpoint of the world.
Yeah, I just, sorry.
I
didn't mean to
believe
go to such a-
that's okay. I think this is something that we all could go on for hours about.
Oh, you're not wrong. I get
I
a
have
little
words, and there are many, many words.
angry. Like
But-
someday I'm going to be done with school and then I'm going to start running for politics. And that's going to be scary as hell for everybody.
I will vote for you.
Believe me.
You could be in my. You could be representing my like city district. I think.
Exactly.
I'm not sure
It's
where the
like-
lines are for our
No,
council.
me neither. But I'm like, you know what? If I have to get in there and stop some of this
Bullshit.
I'll do it. I'll do it. It's not going to be pretty, but I'll do it.
I would love to see the aftermath.
Just getting
They wouldn't.
elected.
They would. Yeah, they wouldn't know it him.
Yeah. So, The Invisible Man, watch it. And if you really want to horrify yourself, think about some of the invisible horrors we've just pointed out and how that might be a wonderful analogy. And how would you stop it if there's no snowstorm to see the footprints in the snow?
Mhm.
Just a thought. Though, as a self-defense thought, if somebody you can't see comes at you, if they can touch you, you can touch them. So junk is usually where junk is. So kick them in the dick. And if it doesn't have a dick between the legs, is generally sensitive, no matter what gender you may subscribe to. So it's always a good ploy. Also, you generally have an idea where eyes are. Go for it. Throat. Go for it.
You have
Bite,
you
claw,
have a
scratch.
head. If you headbutt, it's going to hurt someone.
Yeah.
Stick
well,
a finger
headbutt
up
will
someone's
also hurt
nose.
you,
I'm
just
sorry, it
FYI.
is always awkward to have somebody else's finger up your nose.
Yes.
Push comes to shove, just stick your fingers up their nose. It will feel real fucking weird and they will stop doing whatever they're doing because nobody wants their nose picked by somebody else.
Think of the Three Stooges approach.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Eye gouge. Fingers up
Mhm.
nose. Actually, you don't have to put your
Stretch them
fingers.
out.
You can actually just slam your palm into those. Now, this is not it won't kill them, but this is uncomfortable. They will move.
I was gonna say, trust me, it will still hurt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's still gonna certainly water
Grab their
eyes.
mouth. I mean, it sounds weird, but seriously, if somebody
Seriously.
grabs your jaw, it hurts.
So yeah, I mean, obviously you'd be panicked if you had an invisible person come at you, but I just want you to be aware that if they could touch you, you could touch them.
You
So
can
go
touch it.
get it. And if you
Yep.
start scratching and clawing and biting, you will see blood. So do
I
it.
was gonna say, suddenly they're visible, real big. Blah.
Yeah, it's actually if they're holding on to you, and
Yep.
you're holding on to them. You actually have an advantage because you know where the fuck they are. So there you go.
It's all the self-defense. Listen to her.
rules for fighting invisible foes. You
or
have
any
now just
foe,
re-
really, but you know, in the case of
you have
invisible-
just you've just received a dot in blind fighting.
I mean, why not? This is just another service that we provide.
yes,
We do not recommend Wickermen. We do recommend attacking your invisible
attacker.
attackers. Yeah.
Yep.
Fight back for those invisible attackers.
Always fight if you can, and also we understand if you can't because it's not easy.
No,
Sometimes all you got is curling into a ball, and that's okay.
that is also acceptable. What we want
But-
is you to come out alive on the other
Alive.
side.
Survival is the end goal.
I guess with that, happy Pride, happy Juneteenth. And it seems impossible, but if you can fight the invisible, fight it. Make
Fight
it
it.
visible.
Bring it right out into the open.
Yep.
Watch The Invisible Man.
This has been Girls Ghost Goals, and I'm Jenny.
I'm
Betsy.
Rebecca.
Thanks, everyone.
You have been listening to the Girls Go Schools podcast. You can follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Girls Go Schools podcast, on Twitter at Girls Ghost Pod. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Girls Go Schools podcast, and find our podcast on your favorite podcatcher.